Hello, Hexicans. Well, everything in life could be made into a learning experience, and I've definitely learned something over the last couple days, which is good. I want to make a follow up on my EIP444 video that I had put out the other day, day before yesterday, and then somebody had gone out and asked Dev Kyle, who happened to be on Hexo's channel that day, about it, and he clarified things, and I will have that clip at the end. And also, when I was making the video, I had reached out to Adam Stokes, or Alex Stokes, the creator of the EIPP, and I had asked him some questions about it pertaining to the Hex contract, and he actually has replied to me. And so in terms of the stakes themselves and the actual contract, the way Dev Kyle did it, there isn't going to be any problems with EIP 444. The thing there will be a problem with is the front ends for Hex. Good news is those things are changeable, so somebody's going to have to do some work and change the way it is. Because the way it works right now, all those sexy charts that show up when you're on the home site there, none of them are going to function. The front end's going to have trouble interacting with it, and that's something that can be fixed once the standard is all locked down and the website knows where it's going to be able to get that data from. So there is no big crisis. So one thing I did learn is maybe wait for some replies first before being excited about something or concerned. But, I guess I kind of look at it this way. I just put the information out there as I was finding it. Us as Hexicans have nothing to be concerned about with this EIP. There is still the questions of the older NFTs and some other projects that might have issues with it. But I guess that's on them to figure out. Hopefully they have communities that are vigilant out there, forward-looking. While some community members are sleeping or living their life, that there's somebody out there trying to see the issues way off in the distance. Hey, like, what could be a problem a year or 2 years from now when something new happens to the Ethereum chain? And so I think that's what we can take away from this is, there is people out there looking out for each other's bags, and I count myself as one of them. I'm out there trying to look for anything that could be a potential problem, because I want my bags to retain value. I mean, I know there's the Plan B to the prom, the proof of work change. There's also the Pulse chain, which is our date to the prom, and so we're going to be taking our bags over there and building the community over there. But at the same time, if there's a chance at some legacy assets or some kind of value to be retained on the ETH chain, perhaps for whales, because the fees are going to be really high on there, most likely indefinitely, and even this EIP was storing the data different. I don't see how that's going to reduce fees for unstaking anyways, but that's all conjecture. Now moving forward from that, I have yesterday, as soon as I got home to the computer and I discovered that some of these questions had been answered and that Hex is fine, I took the step of removing my initial video from YouTube. It's not deleted though, it's just unlisted, which means if you search for it, you will never find it, and it will never be recommended to anybody to watch who's looking up the topic. And the reason why I did that is I don't want to spread any more FUD. When I had initially posted the video, I had said this is my FUD, my fear, uncertainty, and doubt about this issue. So I am leaving it up because I did post it on Twitter. So if you ever did want to see this video for some reason, because I still think there's some validity to some of the points about it, and also at the end I did a little deeper dive is, what are ways we could profit from this EIP 444 eventually passing, and I talk about the graph which is being looked at. I talk about Porthole and Arweave, and if any of these three end up being the solution, and that one of these three, chances are might be the solution to this in the future, this might be a good play to make a few bucks, right? Just something to think about. I'm not your investment advisor, but you can take a look and do your own research there, and So I will also link the old video in the comments, but otherwise, if you're looking for it, you're not going to find it unless you click on a direct link to it. And again, I don't want any confusion out there. To me, this is a dead issue now, and the questions have been answered, and so I'm happy to say that. And just so that you're not trusting my word on it, I am going to at the end here leave Dev Kyle explaining it in a more technical fashion. There you go. I'd also like to thank Mr. Stokes there for replying to my question about it relating to the HEX contract. Doubt you'd ever watch this anyways, but hey, good to know. And life goes on. Thank you for watching.
That's interesting.
We got a question for you. Do you know about EIP444, and do you think it'll cause issue with EHEX in the future if implemented?
Somebody asked me about this earlier today. No. So this is a client optimization to not store or vend data older than a year. So it's about block hashes and logs. Those are things that clients care about if you want to look at the guts of what happened in a block 2 years ago. That data is available on the blockchain, but your client software that has a copy of the database doesn't necessarily need to keep that data around to tell you.
Okay.
So let's say you have a website. I realized I need to go higher. Let's say you have a website, and that website says, hey, enter an address here, and I'll tell you everything it's done for the last 5 years. So I go, okay, 0x, blah, 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 and it spits it all out. What it's doing is it has some software that has a copy of the blockchain, and it's searching through all the transactions associated with an address, and then it's going to send that back to your website, and you display it. What EIP44444444 does is basically tells client software that sort of crawls the database, the crawler. It tells the crawler, you could just stop after a year. Don't bother. Don't look. And that's fine. So now your website doesn't work anymore because your website will stop looking after a year.
Right.
HEX as a contract on the blockchain, by definition, has to have the full state of the blockchain available. Because if I send a transaction to a some transaction node, whether I'm running one or I use Infura or whatever alternative, and I say, hey, I want to execute this contract, I want to end a stake. To do that, to actually execute the contract, requires that it do these lookups in the database, not for logs, not for transaction history, but for the actual data that on this day or in this memory slot, which took place on this day, what are the data associated with that? Now add that in, go to the next memory slot, add that in, go to the next memory slot. So it's directly tied to the data that's stored on archive nodes. So if you have an archive of the blockchain, then then the contract has to work.
Okay.
From what I read on that EIP, it's basically just a client optimization, so you don't have to carry around sort of ancient data for the more superficial use cases, like what happened 2 years ago with this address. That shouldn't affect the actual operation of HEX.
Okay.
For practical purposes, it does mean that go.hex.com can't use off-the-shelf client software if that change gets adopted by the main clients. Because for it to tell you about your stakes in the past, it does need logs, it does need transaction histories and events and things like that.
Interesting.
So